Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to be doing a removal of these nails. So I did these nails a couple weeks ago. They're actually about 2.5 weeks old now, and as you can see, some of the nails are quite grown out. And I decided to remove them fully, take them all off, and to show you my process. I use a hard gel on my nails, so that means it needs to be filed off. It can't be soaked off with acetone like soft gel products can. So I wanted to do a video and show you how I do that safely and how I remove my nails quick and easy and safely. So here's one last look of these gorgeous lemon nails. I loved them and I loved having them on. So I'm actually kind of a little bit sad for them to go, but such is the way of nails. They have to be removed so we can do another fun set. So let's get into it. So I wanted to start off by talking about the 3 bits that I use when using my e-file to remove our gel product. So the first one that I start off with is this type of bit over here. It's called a safety bit. The rounded top and edge prevents you from jabbing into your cuticle or cutting your skin, so it's very safe to use as long as you know what you're doing. And this is what I start with. I use this to take off the majority of the layer, and I usually use this on a pretty high speed because I'm trying to get off the bulk of the layer. And then of course, as you get closer and closer and closer to the natural nail, you will use gentler bits and a lower speed on your e-file. So this is typically the first one I go in with, and I use this on a high speed. Once I get most of the product off, I go on to use this cone-shaped bit over here, and I'll typically lower the speed of the e-file that I'm at that point. And why I like this is once I'm starting to get closer and closer to the natural nail, I have to start getting into the little corners over here where the product meets the walls of the nails. And this pointed rounded edge over here helps get into those corners very easily, and it's not as aggressive as the first one, so I tend to lower the speed. I'm also much closer to the natural nail at that point because the majority of the product has been taken off, so I lower the speed to use this one and use it to get into the little corners. Lastly, I go in with a sanding band, and all of these bits actually have a bit of product in them because I just took off the nails on my right hand here. So obviously if you were doing a client, you would be using a fresh sanding band. So these sanding bands come in different grits, usually coarse, medium, and fine. And I start off with a coarse sanding band, and I typically lower down the speed even more, probably to close to like a 8 or 9, sometimes a 10, but usually not. And this, at this point, the product is really, really thin, and we're really, really close to the natural nail, but there's just a bit of product left. So this is what I use. It's much more gentle than the other two. It's a file. It's more like a file. It's kind of just like a file on a spinny band. And this is what I use when I'm very, very close to the natural nail. There's a teeny, teeny, tiny thin layer, and I just need to get that off, but I don't want to risk damaging the natural nails. The 2 other bits, these 2, are way, way, way too aggressive. You would never use this on your natural nail. You will file right through your nail. So that is for, those are for product only, and this is for when I get really, really close to the natural nail and I don't want to risk accidentally filing through my nail. We definitely don't want that. And then once that product is off and I'm basically pretty much at the natural nail, I will lower down the e-file speed to about a 1 or a 2 depending, and then I will just finish off the last bit on the natural nail, clean up the cuticle a bit, and that'll be the end. So those are the 3 bits that I use. Now let's get into the removal process. First things first, before doing any filing, it's a good idea to put a mask on. Gel is a very lightweight product and the dust flies everywhere, especially when you're doing a lot of removal and you do not want to be breathing in that dust. You don't want that getting into your lungs. That can be very dangerous. So always put on a mask when you're filing. So let's go. So I have my e-file off to the side because it's quite large and it's taking up my whole frame over here. But I will tell you what speeds I'm on, and as I change them, I'll let you know. So starting off with the safety bit that I'm going to use to remove the most of my product. And if my voice is a bit muffled, sorry, I'm wearing a mask to protect my lungs, so that's just what it's gonna have to be. So I click in my safety bit, and now I am turning on my e-file to a quite a high speed. I'm turning it on to a 22 speed. And depending on how comfortable you are with your e-file will determine how high of a speed you will use. If you're not very comfortable, use a lower speed. You don't want your e-file getting away from you. You don't want to lose control over it. you can risk really hurting yourself, or if you're working on someone, really hurting them. So only use a speed that you're comfortable with. And obviously when you're working on a product, you can do a higher speed, versus when you're working on your natural nails, you want to use a lower speed. You do not want to use anything too rough on your natural nails. Personally, I'm pretty comfortable with using a high speed, especially on myself. I'm pretty comfortable with that. I am used to it, and especially when I need to take off a large bulk, using anything lower than a 20, it just feels like it's taking forever. So I'm going to start. Let's start with, I like starting with my middle finger. It's just the longest finger and it's the easiest to start with. So I'm going to start here. So I start in downward motions. I'm actually putting on quite a lot of pressure to remove the product. For me, especially when I do stamping, I like putting on a pretty thick top coat. So for the beginning part, I'm mostly just trying to get through the top coat. And once you get through the top coat, going through the actual polish itself is pretty easy. As you can see, I'm starting to wear away those lemons over there and starting to work down the product. I also make sure to turn my fingers at all different angles to make sure I can see everything, especially when you're working on yourself. Sometimes the sides can be hard to get to, so turning your fingers around in all different directions to make sure you can see what you're doing is important. And now I like going side to side and work up the sides of the nails. Now that all of that top layer of top coat and the multiple layers of stamping and polish is gone, you can see that the nail's pretty thin. That's how we like it. And because I'm taking this all off, there's no point really in filing the whole thing, because I just want this to be completely removed. So to save time and effort, I'm just going to clip the end off like so with a clipper, because that was going to come off anyway, and wasting time with a file would have just been unnecessary. So if you're going to remove the whole thing anyway, just save yourself some time and use nail clippers. Now, as you can see over here, pretty close to the natural nail, so I am actually going to lower the speed of my e-file but continue with the safety bit, and I'm going to lower it down to about an 18 and try to remove as much bulk from the free edge over here as possible. And once that comes down to practically the natural nail, I'm going to switch on to my next bit. So now I'm at speed 18 and I'm going to focus primarily on the edge over here, bringing down the product. Working slowly and carefully, because you don't want to reach the natural nail with this bit. It'll go through way too quickly. You can already see some of that natural nail peeking through the product there, so that means I'm getting pretty close. I'm just going to smooth out the middle section where the product was the thickest, where we had the apex, just to bring that down a bit on the sides. And as you can see, I'm moving in much shorter jabby motions as opposed to long pulls as I did before, because now we're very close to the natural nail and we don't want the product sitting on the bit sitting on the nail for too long while it's spinning at such a high speed, because that can cause some really uncomfortable heat burns. So now just going in short little jabs. And now I think we're pretty close to the natural nail there, so I'm going to switch bits. So as you can see, the nail bit kind of picks up some product. So when I switch to the next bit, what I like to do is just put this in some acetone and just let the acetone eat away from the bit so that when I go on to the next nail, it's nice and fresh and clean. And it also helps sterilize it. So now moving on to the next bit. This is the cone bit. And I am going to keep the 18 speed, but I am going to just be a lot more gentle. And this is what I'm going to use to get into those sides and bring it down this middle part over here by the cuticle and bring that all down. And I use my other fingers, like my thumb, to pull away the skin from the nail so I can just get in there really nice and easy. Just doing back and forth motions to bring down the product evenly. And I'm constantly turning my nail like this so I can see how close the product is to the natural nail. So when you go like this, it's hard to really tell how thick the product is. When you go like that, you can see that it's not very thick at all. We're getting very, very close. So making sure to monitor the product to make sure that you're not getting too close to the natural nail with aggressive bits is important too. So constantly, you know, turn your nail to the side, look down the barrel like that, just to make sure that you're safe and not anywhere near the natural nail. So at this point you can see I'm really close to the natural nail. It's already starting to show over here. A lot of the product's already been removed. So I'm going to move on to my sanding band over here. Now, because I'm still working on product and we're not actually touching the natural nail just yet, I'm going to keep the speed relatively high, but not as high as before. So just before I had it on 18. And now I'm going to put it onto a 10. This is still a much more aggressive speed than you would ever use on the natural nails, but because we're still working on product, it's safe enough. So let's go in. And I'm making sure to just keep the sanding band on the product. I'm not bringing that onto the natural nail just yet because the speed is still too high. And if you're uncomfortable using a e-file, if you feel like it'll just get away from you, you're scared to, you can file this off with a hand file as well. You would do pretty much the same thing. You would start with a coarser grit file, so something like an 80, and you would remove the top product and you would just use that to remove everything. And then as you get closer, you would go down to a more medium-sized coarseness of files, so maybe like to a 180. And then as you would get closer and closer to the natural nail, you'd go down lower and lower. So this is possible to do with a hand file. It just takes a lot longer, and I like using the e-file. And as you can see, as we're filing more and more and more of the natural nail is showing up. So as that happens, I am more conscientious of just keeping the e-file away from the natural nail and only focusing on the product. Now I'm going to lower the speed of the e-file even more to about a 6 because we're really, really close to the natural nail now and there's not that much product left. But a 2 would not be strong enough to remove that product. So it still needs some sort of speed, but nothing too much. And again, focusing just on the product itself, not the natural nail. You can see that's coming away nicely. And the product is pretty much gone at this point. There might be tiny little bits here and there, but I'm going to move down the speed of the file to a 2, and I'm going to go over the natural nail. And this is really, really gentle. Going around the cuticle, I like removing any cuticle that's grown out. That just helps give the nail a nice fresh look. Going really, really gently over the nail. Now that all of the product has been removed from the natural nail, I'm going to just file down my nail. I want it to be short and round, so I'm just going to use a regular hand file for that. And then I'm going to use a buffing sponge to just smooth out any ridges or any snags in the nails. And what I like doing next is actually going in with a lint-free pad and some alcohol just to remove any of the dust, so I can see if there's any spots that I've missed. Looking pretty good. And after that, I actually like going in with some nail hardener, since you know, we just did a lot of filing, and although the natural nail didn't get too much work done, you know, it still got some filing. So I go in with a nail hardener to help with the strength of the nail, and this is just an air dry product. Once that's dry, I'm going to go in with a bit of cuticle oil to hydrate the skin. I like to make sure to get under the nail over there, along the sides. And there she is. So if you like this kind of video, make sure to let me know by hitting the like button on the video, and let me know if this is something you'd be interested in seeing again in the future, maybe going into a bit more depth on the different types of products. For example, glitter is kind of different from just regular basic cream polish. There's a little bit more you have to know about glitter and stuff, so if you wanted a video about something like that, let me know. And if you want to see me do a video where I sculpt my extensions with a hard gel and a nail form, let me know and I can do that video as well. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!